recently I was leaving my apartment, got into my elevator, and the elevator stopped at 7, and I saw the hallway was completely dark. Now, you should know something about my building so that you can understand this story. There's an east side and a west side to my building. I live on the west side, and each floor has only 2 apartments. So my neighbor gets into the elevator on the 7th floor, and I'm going to call her Anya. She's a lovely Russian Jewish woman, and just to protect her privacy. And I said to her, Anya, why is it dark there? And she said, I don't know. It's been that way for years. And I'm like, well, do you want it that way? She said, no, but my neighbors must want it that way because it's been that way for years. So I said, well, isn't it your hallway too? She said, yeah, but I don't think I can ask them because they must want it that way because it's dark. So I said, well, Anya, it's your hallway too. I mean, I was a little tentative because I didn't want to be too pushy, but I said, like, you could ask them or tell them that you'd like a little light. So we left the building and she goes, well, how can I say it without being rude? So we spent a few minutes, we developed some language, and she sent them an email. So the next time I saw her, I said, Anya, what happened? She said, they put in light bulbs. And I said, did you find out why it was so dark? She said, no, but they put in light bulbs. And she was very happy. And she said, it taught me a lesson that I can actually ask for what I need. And I was thrilled to have helped her, but I really related to that fear of, stepping into kind of a space where you feel like you can't ask for what you need. It's almost like there's this invisible force field that's keeping you back. So that brings us to our Parsha, because there are 5 women, sisters, who step into the breach and ask for exactly what they need. And the force field they're shifting is no less than the patriarchy. The daughters are called, the sisters, I'll tell you their names in a moment, but they're often referred to as the daughters of Zelofchad, right? Their father was Zelofchad. I think it's a little more empowering to say they were sisters, so not to be defined by their father. And I want to tell you their names, and if you can repeat after me, because I think it's worth remembering their names, and their names are very strange. Hogla, Noah, Tirza, Milka, Machla. Excellent. And here's how the Torah introduces them. The daughters of Zelofchad came close. Vatikravna binot Zelofchad. And now we have a whole line of their ancestry, but only men. Ben Chefer, Ben Gilad, Ben Machir, Ben Menashe. You don't have to repeat these. Lemishpachot Menashe, Ben Yosef, ve'ele shemot benotav, Machla, Noah, v'chogla, u'milka, v'tirza. So the daughters of Zelofchad came close. Zelofchad, the son of Chefer, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, the son of Menashe, of the clan of Menashe, son of Yosef. And these are their names of his daughters, as you heard before. Noah, Machla, Noah, Chogla, Milka, and Tirza. So 6 male ancestors and 5 women. And what did they do? So first they came close, whatever that means, it's not clear. But maybe it's actually defined by the next verse, which says, V'ta'amodna, and they stood. Now let's see where they stood. Lifnei Moshe, before Moses, because Aaron, had already died. V'lifnei Elazar HaKohen, and in front of Elazar the priest. V'lifnei HaNesi'im, and in front of all the princes. V'chol ha'edah, and the whole community, all the people of Israel. 5 women got up and stood there. And before Petach Ohel Moed, in front of the tent of meeting, where Moses typically met God, and where cases were often adjudicated. So they came close and stood. They dared to come close to those in power and stand before the entire community exposed in all their vulnerability. Wow. And what's really interesting is when you hear these words in Hebrew, right, in the Torah, vatikravna, v'ta'amodna, the female plural for came close and standing, it's almost jarring because we hardly ever hear the feminine plural, right, in Hebrew, in the Torah. So they've created their space, and let's hear what their request is. Avinu met bamidbar. Our father died in the wilderness. V'hu lo haya b'toch ha'edah hanoadim al Adonai ba'adat Korach. And he wasn't part of those rebels that were, testifying against Moshe and Aaron and against God. Ki bechet omet. He died in his own sin. Everybody has their own sin unless they're part of a big collective sin, like the rebellion against Moshe and Aaron. Uvanim lo hayulo, and he didn't have any sons. Okay, so for now, it's all kind of in male terms, right? Father died, no sons. But they proceed with their request. Lama yigara shem avinu mitoch mishpachto. Why should our father's name be diminished from his family, from within his family? Ki ein lo ben, just because he doesn't have a son. Tena la achuzah b'toch achei avinu. Give us a holding amidst or within the brothers of our father. Give us a holding. So in all this patriarchal language, it's almost buried, but they finally make their request, which is raw and like exactly what they need. Give us a holding. Their plea is extraordinary, unprecedented on a number of levels. There's no legal precedent for this. 5 women come up to challenge, right, the legal system, the status quo, before the entire people of Israel. Wow, what courage, what guts. And interestingly enough, it leaves Moses completely silent, befuddled. He turns it over to God. Now, before we get to what God said, let's consider, why was Moses, who was adjudicating like the highest level of cases, right, for the people for all these years in the wilderness, right, 38, 40 years. So why would Moses be silent? So if we think a little bit about the time in the wilderness until now, what were the Israelites asking for? We want to go back to Egypt. Let's go backwards. We don't want to be in this wilderness, and we don't want to go to this land. Right? Egypt is a place of melon and leeks and onions and garlic and fish, and we had it great over there. We want to go back to Egypt. So you can imagine Moses was a little confused. This is not the usual complaint. This is, I want to go forward. I want to have a legacy in the land. Wow, a holding in the land. So that in itself is radical. But I think there's something else. Moses is an old man now. He is facing his mortality. He lost his sister. He just lost his sister Miriam a few portions ago. He lost his brother Aaron, and he's been denied to go into the land, right? Because he hit a rock instead of speaking to it before all the congregation of Israel. He can't go into the land. And in fact, the next episode in this very Parsha is him transferring leadership to Joshua. So he's really dealing with his mortality and the fact that he can't go into the land. And here are these women, and I imagine young women, but I don't really know, who are saying, give us a holding in the land. Oh my God, how painful must that have been for him, right? How can Moses deal with that? So Moses turns it over to God. And it says, Vayikrav Moshe et mishpatan lifnei Adonai. So Moses brings the matter close to God, right? The question close to God. just the way the daughters of Zelofchad brought the matter close, or brought themselves close, Moshe is bringing the matter close. So let's see what God says. The first thing that God says is Cain, or yes, right? These daughters of Zelofchad, they are speaking rightly. They are speaking justly. Ken benot Zelofchad dorot. Naton titen lahem achuzat nachala betoch achei avihem, ve'havarta et nachalat avihen lahem. So rightfully speak the daughters of Zelofchad, or yes, speak the daughters of Zelofchad. You are to give them a hereditary holding in the midst of their father's brother. You are to transfer the inheritance of their father to them. They got what they asked for, right? It's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and she said, even when I don't get what I want, asking itself already shifts the force field. And I feel better. I feel more empowered. But they got what they wanted. But God goes further. God turns their case, right, into case law for all the Israelites. So here's how it goes. If a man has no sons, his daughters will inherit. If a man has no daughters, his brother will inherit. If a man has no brothers, his closest kin will inherit. Each impossibility becomes a possibility. To ensure, and here's the kicker, or here's one of the kickers, that an Israelite man will not lose his legacy and his name will not be diminished in the holdings, right, and the history of Israel. So ultimately, it's not about daughters, and yet still they asked for what they wanted. The passage concludes with these words: "This shall be the law of procedure for the Israelites in accordance with Adonai's command to Moses." So recently, I ran into my neighbor again, and I said, "Well, how's it going, Anya?" And she said, "They keep putting in more light, right? So possibilities for her of light are multiplying." And if you think about the daughters of Zelofchad, their father's name means fear of shadow. Fear of shadow. Maybe the patriarchy is defined by this fear of darkness, and they were willing to step into the breach of legal invisibility, right, to become seen. They were the ones who weren't afraid. There are other people in our history, and I mean broadly our history, who by one gesture changed everything. Think about Rosa Parks in 1955, refusing to give up her seat to a white man and go to the back of the bus, right? That helped initiate the entire civil rights movement. Think about the words of Muriel Rukeyser, a 20th century poet who said, "What would happen if one woman told the truth about her life? The world would split open." Think about our own moment of impossibility and what would it take to shift on the political front, on the climate front, on the pandemic front, what it would mean to come forward and shift these force fields. We are right now walking a narrow path from the 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av. From the moment when the walls in Jerusalem were breached to the moment of destruction of our temples. We're walking this path of impossibility, and it's a narrow path. It's more important than ever to stand up with courage and ask for what we need, especially when it is aligned with justice, especially when we've been overlooked by the legal system, treated as marginal, as invisible. So come close and stand, ask for what you want, step into the light. This is what the daughters of Zelofchad, or these 5 sisters, have to teach each of us. Come ever so close, stand, speak. New language comes out of your mouth. Even if you have no clout, ask. Take off your mask, bask in the light. The world will shift and change, rearrange. Old force fields slip away. Shadow gives way to light. fear dips. You sit with your hands in place, and then you stand, you command, you take the space, you come close. Then you land. You band together with your sisters. You walk forward slowly, boldly. You've become a resistor. You move beyond meekness and bleakness. You peak. And now you're reeking of passion. You're smashing up the powers that be, slashing old chains, flowering in new rains, drawing on ancient stashes of powering. You're reconnecting, perfecting, rejecting, and then accepting, respecting, directing, intersecting. You rise up a new person, sizing up the old order, baptizing a new way, because you had the courage, to come close, to stand, to stretch out your hand, to understand, because you were willing to drill deep, fulfill, instill freedom, to move beyond the damned and ask for this endless promised sand.